When a vengeful spirit, the onryo, will begin her hunt for those who have wronged her, the sky will roar its madness until every last one of them stops breathing. That is the crux of Ghost of Yotei, at least up until its final act. When a young protagonist, Atsu, finds herself to be wronged and left behind of everyone she ever cared about, she spends the rest of her young life lost in the hunt of the Yotei Six. Yes, she spent the majority of those years fighting a war not her own, but she fought a war living, breathing in the night that changed her entire life. And while Atsu's story of vengeance and overcoming her trauma is full of ups and downs, Seattle-based Suckerpunch studio decided to fill the rest of this world with the most beautiful scenery to ever grace our eyes. The art team over at the studio has done some incredible work giving life to both Tsushima and now Yotei. It all began with the dream to bring the tragic period of the Mongol invasion in the Japanese island to life during the Kamakura period, largely defined by the rise of the warrior class, which held martial skills and the ideals of honor, duty, loyalty, and bravery in the highest regard. Now, it is important to understand what was at stake during the development of this game. Suckerpunch, a studio that, while responsible for giving us some cult classics like Infamous and Sly Cooper, but can this new generation of Suckerpunch really live up to the expectations set by other Sony first-party titles? Can you do something so amazing that Sony is ready to give you the resources you need for a dream project, and ultimately to make the Ghost of Yotei? And so amidst the ballooning AAA budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars, with Spider-Man 2 reportedly reaching the development budget of over $300 million, Suckerpunch came with the ambitious idea to produce a cinematic title with possibly one of the most fluid combat systems, extensive open world system, and most importantly, the most beautiful world of the PlayStation 4 generation, only with a reported budget of $60 million. Sony finally greenlit this studio-defining idea in 2014 that was first centered around a very different idea. Indeed, the game was first centered around pirates and historic outlaws before finally settling upon exploring the harrowing tale of Jin Sakai. Nonetheless, once the vision was set, early development began and concept artists began to define what the world of Tsushima would look like from the studio's spectacle. Art design is very integral to both of the Ghost games. They wanted to focus on historical accuracy while exposing a beautiful world, merely to evoke the sense of the epic samurai fantasy. Despite the limited surviving details of that era, the studio tried its best to carefully observe whatever articles it could. They tried to understand the Japanese culture, clicked on-site photos from Tsushima and mainland Japan, watched old samurai films to do justice to a game of this scale, especially being one of its kind in the medium at that time. And so therefore, whatever the studio was going to produce had to be a genre-defining experience. And a genre-defining experience needed a protagonist to live up to the name. Luckily, we got Jin Sakai. His designs were always meant to incorporate his ghost persona, meant to continuously reflect his ongoing inner fight between honor and the right thing to do, while the rest of his outfits better fit with the aesthetic of classic samurai films, a depiction rooted in Ronin Wanderers. All of this beautifully incorporated the overall vision of the art team. The vision to make a living, breathing world that's not just a beautiful backdrop, but rather a distinct character filled with sweeping vistas, crafted to evoke the raw poetry of feudal Japan under siege. They wanted to elevate the scale of cinematic artistry to a scale never seen or tried before. And to do that, they reminded the entire industry that realism per se is not the only way you can create these grand visuals. And so the studio adapted a formula of expressiveness over realism, evident in every corner of both of these games. They filled the screen with different types of flora, filled the fields with different species of plants, all equally beautiful, and let the wind guide you to your next destination. This is visual treat at its peak. Foggy dawns and eerie skunk cabbage blooms heighten the mysterious aura of small towns, while our protagonist comfortably waves through the washing flora and lives his counted moments of peace amidst the horror of the Mongol invasion. Because every technical aspect of the beauty of this game is meant for increasing the player's interaction in this world. Indeed, the controller is how the player will live through this beautiful world. Just like how Jin follows the flow of the plants around him, the players follow a system at the heartbeat of this game, wind navigation. Another one of its kind systems that animates everything from the grass rippling in procedural gusts to floating leaves that drift realistically over cliffs and campfires, creating a unified sense of motion across its distinct 24-hour cycle and dynamic weather. These vistas are not just intimate, but a perfect balance of evoking the right emotions and a presentation of the grand scale of the island and its beauty. And in a way, this beauty of the world also reminds Jin of what's at stake, why he must stand up for the land where he grew up. And so therefore the island itself transforms traversal into meditation and purpose for both us and Jin Sakai, where every ridge reveals a haiku-worthy panorama. It's a testament of how the thoughtful design of a video game can simulate a living, breathing world and incorporate every aspect of that world so that the player almost never has to interact with the user interface. And so when you have such a great foundation, how do you evolve this for a sequel? Where does one go from here? Well, to Ezo.
After 16 years, I've come home to the wilds of Ezo. I will avenge my family. Every member of the Yotei Six will suffer.
When you have as great of a foundation as Suckerpunch did with Ghost, what do you do for a sequel? Will a sequel be even able to capture the same magic that made the first game so wonderful? Well, apparently it did that, and then some. Doing a direct sequel to Tsushima was much easier, especially given the fact that the spirit of the continuation of the story is already present in the ending of the first game. And I'm sure it could still happen too, but Suckerpunch felt that this other story about Atsu, a vengeful spirit, was very important to tell too. It's a dream project, refining everything from the first game and taking it up to the point where everything feels more complete than ever. Building on Tsushima's success, Suckerpunch's art direction for Ghost of Yotei, set in 1603 Hokkaido, aims for even greater ambition. They have somehow managed to accommodate these vast valleys and dynamic landscapes on your screen where nothing is too far off the eye. Everything is within your grasp, even the Yotei Six. It just depends upon how you interact with this world. Everything is a choice, except the morally ambiguous ones that Atsu will make on this journey. But nonetheless, immersion is taken to the next level, where almost after every few seconds the game will naturally take you to some grief-stricken resident, or rather countless other world events, not even side quests that deserve its own separate video. It's somehow only an evolution of the systems introduced in Tsushima, but at the same time they have gone and changed everything about the open world system of the first game, while keeping the spirit of the things alive. The game stands upon three core principles, as mentioned by the art director Joanna Wang: evoking deep emotional moods to connect the players to the story, prioritizing cultural respect through strategic collaborations, and ensuring cohesive alignment across art, tech, narrative, and gameplay. This is a celebration of gaming, a living, breathing painting with billions of frames, rich detail in every corner of the map, and a tribute to Japanese films, cinematography, photography, and traditional works. They even went on to study the classical depictions of grass blades for realistic movement. That first glaze at Atsu's barren and once dreamlike home briefly swept under the warm shadow of the towering Mount Yotei. Everything on your screen perfectly captures the region's raw scale. Wind-swept grass, seasonal shifts, and seasonal biome transitions. Massive draw distances and ecosystem layers like procedural foliage, bird flocks, and DualSense haptics for immersion. It's everything coming together as intended to give you an elite gaming experience. All done with the same budget as Ghost of Tsushima. And yet for all its grandeur, Yotei never feels bloated or overstuffed. It's a masterclass in restraint, where every aspect of its world screams that it has a story to tell, of loss, of joy, of laughter, and of sorrow. The combat, that exquisite dance of steel and shadow, building upon Tsushima's fluidity, parry and attack ballet, but infusing it with the feral unpredictability of the north. Atsu doesn't just fight, she haunts, chaining assassinations into whirlwind takedowns that leave the screen a canvas of crimson poetry. Everything here is the dedication of hundreds of developers to raise the bar of the interactive medium. And in that context, it's amazing how a studio can make the maximum use of the amazing DualSense controller, while other studios have long ignored its potential to extend the reach of these virtual worlds to the player. Every slash of Atsu's blade can be felt by the player, ultimately the weight she carries in this journey with herself, and DualSense just becomes an extension of that long carried weight. It's drawing in the love and passion of all these people. Indeed, it really is a dream come true. Because think about the Suckerpunch that almost died in the wake of a new gaming age, convinced that their inexperience would scare off anyone with a checkbook. The Suckerpunch that once released a game and the public barely noticed, that Suckerpunch now got to release one of the most anticipated game of the year, with one of the most prolific publishing unit in the industry right now. Releasing Ghost of Yotei was full of emotions for the team at the studio. Finally being able to release the full scale of their dreams, and all of that became possible with the success of Ghost of Tsushima, which presented them with an opportunity to finally tell the story they have long yearned to tell.
Please, let it go, sister.
I can't.
No, I love the tale of Jin Sakai in Ghost of Tsushima. It had a habit of continuously asking a deeper question of morality and defying the rules and code of honor set by the greater samurai culture. But I believe that I felt personally much more attached to Atsu and her journey than I did with Jin Sakai before.
You can't escape that night.
I'm trying. But I can't do it without you.
Atsu's tale begins as her being a broken shell of herself. While all of her flashbacks have a distinct warm glow to them, the vibrance of one's childhood, as if it's the place to belong, a place of safety, safety among the presence of your elders and loved ones. This visual dichotomy is not mere stylistic flourish, but rather a deliberate choice to create a sense of illusion, to escape the present and live in the refuge of the past. Atsu's childhood as the blacksmith's daughter had a seamless at-hand belonging where tools like her father's hammer and relations between siblings and parents formed a coherent world. The glow symbolizes this pre-reflective harmony, a place of safety, where being in that world felt authentic and never-ending, as if nothing could ever go wrong, and yet everything is already destined to go wrong. Even Atsu's return to her rotting home never gives back that distinct golden hue glow. Despite the vibrance of the world around her, the beauty of Ezo is not enough for her to take on a fight for its people, like it once influenced a legend centuries ago. There's two very different ways both Jin and Atsu dealt with the death of their fathers, a significant moment in both of their lives. Both of these protagonists had survivor's guilt, the guilt of not being able to do something to make a harrowing event in their lives stop. And while Jin understood the need to stand for the people of his island, be better and live up to the legacy of his father after his death, Atsu did the exact opposite. Any trace of innocence was an instant fade away. She spent years fighting a war for strangers, constantly thinking about the people who destroyed her world, broke a promise. Both Jin and Atsu blamed themselves for what happened that day. It's just that Jin used it for a much better cause than Atsu. Jin improved himself, and Atsu became an entirely different person, one who cannot show weakness or mercy anymore, a vengeful spirit indeed. This is also very prevalent in the flashback sequences of our protagonists, where Jin uses his sets of flashbacks in the spirit of fighting the good fight against the Mongols. Atsu uses her nightmares to fuel her rage against the Six. Perhaps the surrounding of a loved one, Lord Shimura, made all the difference in Jin's world, compared to Atsu being left off completely alone. This is also signified later in the game upon a rather cliché yet impactful reunion. The Yotei Six shattered that sense of forever and lasting glow in a single night. After being pinned to that ginkgo tree and to be forced to watch the tragedy befell upon you, you decide to bring down the roar of thunder on everyone responsible for what happened. And so the Ghost of Yotei was born. This isn't a quest to restore honor. Neither is it one of salvation, at least not yet. Unlike Jin's code-bound heroism torn between duty and the sense of human feeling, where dishonor became a reluctant descent into the ghost for communal salvation, Atsu's vengeance is raw and unapologetic. She's not here to work for the benefit of a larger cause. She just has one agenda, and it's clear from the get-go. This game has a contract with vengeance. You're not shown any consequences or the effects of violence that Atsu inflicts upon others, at least not up until the very end. It's clear about what it is, a story about a protagonist who is unapologetically dead set on revenge. It's not even trying to show a larger cause or a fight against the Yotei Six, ultimately for the benefit of the people of Ezo. Any act that Atsu engages in the world is largely a complementary benefit of the people surrounding her in furtherance of her own personal agenda. That's not to say that she is incapable of showing empathy, but rather that she has mostly restricted herself from helping people, unlike Jin Sakai. Now this makes her a flawed character, not fundamentally but rather deliberate one. She's human. She's a lost soul bound to make mistakes, ones that perhaps will cost her too much, and despite the game's lack of interest in showing the consequences of Atsu's rage, it is indeed vengeance that will steal her of any chance of reclaiming that sense of belonging. And once the killing starts, only then will her quest start to become more and more ambiguous. For a large part of the first act, you wander the Yotei grasslands getting to know the mechanics of the game. It's crazy the kind of upgrades they have made here compared to Tsushima in the favor of immersion. Herds of horses race you as you traverse in the depth of the valley. Tribes communicate and trade with you during their commute while you cook food for yourself or simply play the shamisen in the silence of sweeping fields and flocks. If you're a little bored, play the addiction-inducing game of Zeni Hajiki in the smoke and mud-covered depths of the Yotei Inn. Or maybe duel Takezo's disciples, a bunch of crazy fanatics. And if you don't want to do any of these, suit yourself. Suckerpunch got you covered because they will throw some random world event your way anyway. Clearly there's an inspiration from Red Dead Redemption 2 here, just not at that same scale for obvious reasons. All of these interactions are meant to establish a clear distinction between Jin and Atsu. She's a lone wolf, she always has been, and then this happens.
Atsu. It's me. You don't recognize your own brother.
At first, this scene might come off as cheap or cliche, but when you look at it, it continues to make more and more sense with the larger themes of this story. Atsu's lost identity must be restored with the love of her lost twin wolf, restoring the very condition that saved Jin Sakai from becoming a ruthless mercenary in the wake of revenge. Because thinking more about it, I feel like this is a continuous pattern in this series. Both Jubei and Atsu share the trauma of that night, and yet Jubei has grown up nothing like Atsu. Perhaps once again, the mercy and love of those who adopted him saved him from walking down the same path as Atsu. Again, very similar to Jin Sakai. And so whatever rational behavior or argument against going after the Yotei Six you can see in this story, most of them stem from Jubei. Atsu is merely a product of years of trauma and guilt. The lack of a purpose, the one that she did have, ended up ruining her life more than saving. But can you really blame her? After years of thinking and living in the guilt of leading the killer of her father to their house, watching both of her parents die in front of her, watch the tree under whose shadow she played the shamisen with her mother burn, watch your brother die in front of you. After all that, can you really blame her for tying a sash for vengeance around her waist and living for one last job? This is the rational argument for Atsu's behavior. Perhaps it's the natural way to act in such a situation. At the start of the game, our protagonist had just one goal in her mind, one that blinded everything else no matter what. And after achieving that, she was going to sacrifice herself to the flames. Atsu's biggest problem up until this point had been that she can't really draw a line, the consequences of which we see later in the game. Under no circumstance can she really believe in the idea of not going after these people. It's what she's known forever. For if she doesn't go after them, what would she even do? And so when the names start to be crossed off the list, the weight on Atsu's waist gets heavier as the toll of this quest takes upon you. And that's when she meets Oyuki in the search of the Kitsune. Initially, she comes off as a reflection of Atsu's mother, playing the calm tone of the shamisen with a peaceful smile. But something's off from the very beginning. And when the truth is finally revealed, Atsu is forced to show mercy for the sake of this quest. Indeed, it was the necessity of that situation that forced her to begin taking a look at the bigger perspective here. While that is not yet rooted in the most humble of intentions, it is certainly a beginning of something. A lot of this started to remind me of The Last of Us Part 2 at this point in the game, but I was convinced that it was going to be a very different kind of story. More on that later. After confronting Lord Saito for the first time since the Night of the Burning Tree, in whatever order that you do, you head for the second act of the game, which begins with a huge spectacle. This is a part of the larger dream of the studio that I was talking about. Being able to do these set pieces of such a scale and finally getting the freedom to tell the story they want to tell, and most importantly in the way that they want to tell. All of that required Tsushima's success. This then leads to the introduction of who I believe to be the most important character for this game and Atsu's arc. Her niece, Kiku.
Atsu という。
俺の姉だ。
おばさま。
そうだ。
Kiku is the reflection of what Atsu could have been, a happier version of herself, a version of herself that could have had a family while growing up. And so it becomes even more important for Atsu to finally recognize the need to understand someone more than herself. to finally place someone above her need for vengeance. But will she? Everything that has happened so far points to the fact that yes, she will obviously choose her niece and her safety over this quest. But again, she doesn't know how to give up on this quest. She's never learned to love people. The only family she had long ago died. And so when the moment finally comes for her to make a choice, can we really blame her for making a choice rooted in her DNA? This entire fight is a culmination of what Atsu has been through so far. Perhaps the last fight that will be driven by her rage. It's a moment when my realization and understanding of The Last of Us Part 2 came full circle. Indeed, it feels like a rather digestible version of that story that isn't set on making the player uncomfortable every other moment. And I don't mean that in a bad way for either game. It's about the choices these characters make. And now that the choice of choosing vengeance over your family has been made, amends must be made too. But since you're talking about The Last of Us Part 2 so much, how can we not talk about perspective? I know it's difficult to believe that these warlords who are painted so evil, how can one take a leap of faith in their humanity? I always knew that Atsu would begin to make some terrible choices in the wake of vengeance by the end, but I never thought that they would actually try to humanize anyone from the Yotei Six. How would they even do it? Who guessed that maybe Oyuki or the Saito brothers were perhaps not there by their own choices? Who knew that Saito lost a daughter because of Kengo's rebellion against his clan? It's not really an extensive attempt to make you feel bad for any of the antagonists, but simply to force Atsu to finally give rest to the demons that drive her life, her choices. And so when the moment finally comes to do what she's been waiting to do for 16 years, she gives her sash to the flames, screaming that this final fight of hers is not in the name of revenge, but it's a promise that despite what has been lost, be it Jubei or Atsu's parents, she will fight for a new cause from now and protect Kiku from becoming the onryo, a final culmination of the overall themes of this story. What Lord Shimura became to Jin Sakai, Atsu became to Kiku. This is the personal tale of Atsu and her vengeful quest. To be honest, Yotei has made me fall in love with this franchise as a whole. Somehow it retrospectively changed a lot of my opinion about Tsushima's story. After spending the past few weeks knowing about the history of the studio, what these games mean to everyone working at Suckerpunch, all of it has just made me appreciate these stories much more. I loved this overall theme of guardianship and how much it prevents you from making the wrong decisions or helps you feel at home when you're lost. There's so much more to talk about here. I didn't even talk about the amazing music that I often listen to simply to get lost, or how they can even manage to do all of this with such a small budget compared to the AAA norm. But maybe all of that should take rest for some other video.